Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming. We're here obviously to celebrate issue number 14 that's just coming out, and we have 5 readers for you tonight. And we're going to take a short intermission in between our readings. And the only thing I want to ask you to do, if you could, is just turn off your cell phones. It goes without saying that everybody here is a book lover. All of us adore books in every form. And, for me, it's always been this extraordinary, sublime pleasure to browse for books in a bookstore. You're waiting for the train, you've got 15 minutes, you get to go into a bookstore. You don't even have to buy something, but you can grab a book. And what I have for you guys this evening is, in all the years that I've ever browsed for books, I brought you the best find of the entire period. Can you see this? It's the Complete Idiot's Guide to Enhancing Self-Esteem. So let's just do an experiment and see what the first lesson is. Okay, this is strange. It's not, don't buy a book that calls you an idiot, which we expected. And what I love about this is the notion of what the marketing must have been like. Because first of all, it's not just idiot, it's complete idiot. So no partial application, you have to be a complete idiot. And then the other aspect that I love is the notion of the marketing meeting that somebody probably went, no, they like being called idiots. That's the whole point. So anyway, I found that astonishing. It's not made up. I actually found this book. And I found it in Barnes & Noble on St. Mark's. And the reason I thought that was important is because as somebody who browses for books, there's been all this controversy about e-books versus print, etc. None of that interests me. What interests me is the failure of big box retail. Because in big box retail, I began to find things that I hadn't known were available in bookstores. For instance, in the basement of Barnes & Noble, I found a section called Religious Fiction, which I just love because it was like, well, who chose what goes in there? How do we know who's dominating this? And so the other part of it that's fabulous is that you'll find in big box retail an enormous section of different aspects of psychology. Whereas if you're in a small bookstore, you're going to have like Otto Rank and his turgid Teutonic stuff right next to Mommy Needs Help. Whereas in big box, it all can get spread out. And that brings us to the notion of, okay, so you're in the bookstore and you're looking for the beloved, but then you notice she's in codependency. And you realize, no, that's not really going to work for me. So what happens is that with regard to these idiot books, also the sister ones are the dummy books, of course, that you guys know as well, there was a controversy. And the controversy in the bookstore was, okay, now do we put each of the dummy books or the idiot books in with the section? In other words, if it's a book on teratological psychology, do we put in monsters or psychology, or do we group them all together? So the stock guys were all fighting with the customer service guys, which way are we going to go? And as usual, when nothing's at stake, it's a vicious fight. But it ends up being settled in favor of the people in customer service because they wanted to be able to say, when someone approached them, have you looked at idiots? And that was it. So that's my pain for the notion of where big box retail has gone. So this evening, we're taking a look at our new Epiphany, number 14. And at the end, I'm going to want to thank a lot of people because, as always, there's a tremendous amount of hard work that goes into this. Obviously, Odette did huge work to get us to this. So did Gus, so did Willard. I have 2 readers here, Sue Hindle and Christopher Shade, who also put a lot of work. If I'm leaving anyone out, there was just a lot of people behind the scenes that did a lot of work. So we're going to start with 3 pieces. George Choundas. George, how did I do with that?
Perfect.
Perfect. George, yeah. That's the first time only. And then we're going to hear from Tally Brennan, and then Rachel Weissman, and then we'll have an intermission. And at the intermission, you want to go buy your books because we have a raffle going. And if you buy a book, you get a number, and then if you win the raffle, you get all sorts of good things, $50, a subscription, whatever else. And I'll go into the elaborate rules at the midpoint. But let's look at George's work. He has written fiction and nonfiction in over 20 publications, including the American Reader and Michigan Quarterly Review, Mid-American Review, and Subtropics. He is the author of The Private Primer and a former FBI agent. He reported the FBI Academy at 196 pounds, was dismayed to learn that he was the heaviest weight class in defensive tactics, over 195. By week 3, even his blood hurt. By week 5, his bad ear was his good ear. So tonight, I'd like you to welcome George Choundas. Thank you.
Well, first, thanks very much to the good folks at Epiphany for having this event. This is excellent. Thanks also, of course, to the Center for Fiction for hosting the event, and most important, thanks to all of you for actually showing up and making it an event. It's a real pleasure and a privilege. But let me tell you about the story that I wrote and that Epiphany kindly decided to publish. And in order to do that, you should know that every morning on my way to work, I come out of Grand Central and I walk past this building, the Center for Fiction. And I then walk up Fifth Avenue and west past Rockefeller Plaza. And every evening on the way home, I walk the same route back. I walk past Rockefeller Plaza, down Fifth Avenue, past the Center for Fiction, and into Grand Central. And this commute means a couple of things. The first thing it means is that because I'm a member, fortunately, of the Center for Fiction, I stop in as much as possible and get a tasty snack in book form when I can. And the second thing is that it means I see a lot of tourists doing their tourist things, such as photographing poles or strolling 7 abreast, as tourists are wont to do, and riding pedicabs. I see a lot of tourists riding a lot of pedicabs. And so at the end of one work day, it was back in September 2011, I was doing just this commute when on the northeast corner of 48th Street and Fifth Avenue, which is just 2 blocks from here, I see a pair of girls. And I call them girls, not women, because I don't think they were 18. They were maybe 16 or 17. And I also saw gliding past these girls a pedicab. The driver was standing on his pedals with this smile, this glorying, cocky smile, and looking at one of the girls, the more northerly of the 2 girls, staring at her. And then the northerly girl just indicates with a waggling hand that she didn't want a pedicab ride. She did, one of these things. That's okay. So that's all I saw. And I didn't see what happened next, and in all likelihood, the pedicab just kept trucking onto other prospective customers. But as I trudged the rest of the way to Grand Central, I saw in my head what happened next. And I know this happens to other people. It doesn't happen to me. I don't have stories come sort of wholesale and unbidden. That just doesn't happen. I have to work really hard at it, unfortunately. But I heard, in this instance, every word spoken between the pedicab driver and these tourists. And when I got to Grand Central, I boarded the train and I wrote it all down. And a few edits later, I had my story. So I'm grateful that the story just filled my head the way it did. That was a gift. But it was also a problem, because for me, it raised or re-raised this issue that I have about the accidentality, I guess I'll call it, of writing, which is, what if I hadn't happened to look up as I walked down Fifth Avenue that day? What if I had, but those 2 girls had been delayed, photographing one of their poles extra carefully and had arrived at that curbside only after I had already passed? What if I hadn't gone to work that day? So every writer in this room, and I know there's a lot of writers, every writer in this room has experienced that glorious moment when you hear or see something, a kid in a school uniform bounding upstairs, or an elderly woman bumming a cigarette off a cop, and you realize that's a story. Or you're working on a story, it's not working out at all, months, weeks, years go by, and then you happen to stay up late one night, and it works, things click, and what you have is some fresh resolution or some crystallization of the story. And what you now have is not just a story, but a good story, and a potentially great story. But it makes you wonder, or at least it makes me wonder, what if I hadn't stayed up late that particular night? Is the difference between art and failure just sheer stupid luck? Is writing just Russian roulette, just in a much more plodding, drawn out, less exciting version? And so I thought a lot about this dilemma, and the best I've come up with is 3 answers. And the first is an argument from the contextual, which is that life itself is random and delicate and contingent, just like each time you sit and write and gamble on something happening. So why should writing be any different? And second is an argument from the counterfactual, which is I actually give thanks that I'm a writer, and not a stone sculptor or a rodeo rider or a ballet dancer, because those pursuits are random and delicate and contingent, just like writing is. But moreover, they're self-annihilating, because every time that stone sculptor strikes that chisel, that stone irreversibly damages his nerves, and every time that rodeo rider rides a bronco, his rope-fastened forearm just gets dozens of microfractures sent up his radius and ulna, and every time that ballet dancer takes this grand allegro leap, it degrades her foot, whereas we, as writers, can write with impunity. And third, an argument from the aspirational, which is if writing is a matter of odds, then we can skew those odds, we can stack that deck, and never stop writing, and write as much as possible, and just trust that when we do write, good things will happen. So anyway, those are my arguments. Are they definitive? Of course not, but they're enough. And so let me just get to the story. I just want to spend half my time introing that story, but importantly, what happens next? The pedicab driver slows, the northerly girl waggles, and this is what I saw in my head. I'm starting in the middle of the story, because what he says is, free ride, he tells her. She looks at him, then away at nothing, and back again. Free? Free, no charge. She smiles uncertainly. This he understands to be a cue. Really, no charge, he says. Come on, for you, free. The string of words tricks out a flicker of accent. Two of them reveal an imported chivalry, sly and profligate. If he enjoyed a childhood sport, it was soccer. She raises her eyebrows at Southerly, who does not react especially. He seizes on the pause. On one condition, he says, slow enough to imply it was planned all along. If I make you laugh, I take you out to dinner. He's comfortable with idiom. A foreigner then, but not lately. What? Yes, if I make you laugh, even once, I buy you dinner. If you don't laugh, then no dinner. He holds her eyes, blinking only once, his long lashes. This time she does not look at her friend. She speaks their destination as a question, gets a nod and a second blink, a wink, and settles into the pedicab. He watches, half turned in his seat. Her friend follows, pausing to look where she will place her ass before placing it. This, he has seen, is something only the self-regarding and the self-effacing do with their asses. They move west into the general orange of sunset. It has crossed down a number of avenues. The breeze is steady because his pace is steady, but his path is not. Each time a car ahead goes recalcitrant, he veers toward one side, as if to complain to his fellows parked there. And just before he gives one of these a nice dent for not helping, he veers streetward again, pulling into a corridor not visible before. He makes co-workers of centimeters. Northerly wonders why his calves are not a bigger deal. Rather than protrude, they are simply solid, creditable, without casting outward for credit. Pistons in their sheaths. She expects him to turn around so he can crack a joke, or make a face, or simply look back charmingly, or impishly, or goadingly, or quizzically. He does none of these. In fact, as he pedals, he spends much of his time looking about, at sky and storefronts, as if he were on holiday, the pedicab, a hatbox. He slows. They have arrived. The girls step onto the sidewalk. Still, he does not look at them. Northerly comes around to face him. You didn't make me laugh, she says. Make you laugh? His mouth stays open. You were supposed to make me laugh. What? You said, make me laugh or I buy you dinner. This is what I said. And look, he crosses his arms like a big baby, tucking hands into armpits. I don't even think about laughing. She laughs. Got you, he says, grinning broadly. He gives the sides of her shoulders a slow, deliberate, two-handed pat. I want my money back, she says. Now he laughs. Got you, she says, waggling this time her head in vague caricature and giving his shoulders the same double pat. She fights down a smile as her hands outbounce in a pantomime of recoil. Write down your address. Pick you up tomorrow night, 7:30. Steadily, she takes from her purse a piece of paper and writes on it and gives it to him. Dress comfortable, he says. Tomorrow you're driving. She laughs. He pulls his machine toward him. You laughed a second time, he says, getting on. Now it's dinner and breakfast. You wish, she says, allowing herself a giggle. She grabs onto her friend and starts walking. He pedals slowly, standing, Backward, now forward. He is underway as he calls out. I like bacon with my eggs. They are moving exactly apart. For looking, they use the air over their shoulders. They speak to each other, but call to the city. What about names with your addresses? Slow down, beautiful, he speeds up. Let's take this slow. Thanks.
Thank you, George. You know, in my haste, I forgot to thank the Center for Fiction, by the way, who graciously allows us to come in here whenever we have a new issue and hold one of these things, and who are meticulous in terms of their preparation and enormously helpful throughout. So again, thank you, Center for Fiction. So next we're going to hear from Tally Brennan, whose story, The Original, appears in issue 14. Tally is a recovering computer programmer, and she's emerged finally from her cubicle to become a fiction writer. Her stories have appeared in a number of publications and journals, including Rosebud, 13th Moon, PMS/Poem, Memoir, Story, Room of One's Own, Kaleidoscope, Minetta Review, Meriden, and online at JMWW, Hobo Pancake, and Lady Jane Missling. A story of hers was selected for inclusion in Writing Aloud, Interact Theater's series of readings of professional actors, and nominated by the publisher for the Pushcart Prize. If you haven't read this story, it's an amazing experience of the writer as ventriloquist. She is grateful to the Leeway Foundation, the Astria Foundation, Tally? Okay, we just read that one, and 5 Counties Art Foundation in Pennsylvania for their support. Please welcome Tally Brennan.
Thank you all for coming on a very dubious night. I'm going to read from a story called The Original. It starts with a rap. The Viet Mom don't talk the talk. Pull up them saggy pants, you gonna walk. Take Big Brother's t-shirt off, tie your shoes. Us going to the high school, crazy ass news. Mad worrified about firstborn's fate. Old lady needs second son to translate. Yeah, Andung had his name all over the TV. Now everybody knows my brother can't cut it. 11 kids in the hospital, all Vietnamese. But Andung got it worse. Broken leg, broken nose, concussion. Did he even make a fist? Negatude. Vietnamese guys don't fight back. Why they get no respect? 2 detectives came to the house, gang control officers from the Criminal Intelligence Unit. Big dudes with blinged up badges on chains around their necks. They say Andung got hurt in a gang war. Little sundogs say, no way. Only gang firstborn hanging with B, book monkeys at the library. Cha slaps me for disrespect. But cops don't pay him no attention. Just write the address of the hospital, leave. Shit. At my school, somebody gets jumped every day. In the stairwells, the bathrooms, the lunchroom, wherever they catch some Asian kid alone. Even the girls get active. Middle school black girls are tough. Most of them bigger than me, but I deal. Stand tall, look in their eyes, open my mouth and let some dog rhyme them dizzy. The high school is huge, man, big as a city. Corridors a block long with tile up the walls and dusty curls of ceiling paint hanging. Busted lockers bolted over with plywood. Bars on the library door where glass used to be. Old-timey desktop computers in there, no books. Way at the end of the hall, a sticking out sign says office. We go in. Behind this big-ass wooden desk is a lady. Noi da dun, May whispers. Like I can't see the principal is black? A bodacious African-American lady sitting up on a high-backed throne like a queen. Behind her, a wall of pictures in golden frames. Lady Principal with Oprah, with Tavis Smiley, with the mayor, her and some other people, with the President of the United States. I recognize Martin Luther King Jr., alone by himself, and Nelson Mandela before he died. Important black ladies start to frown. May don't know she getting put down. May's plaid blouse don't match her plaid skirt. Both together make your eyes hurt. Middle of winter wearing sandals with socks. Lady Principal's dangly earring rocks. You need to see me, Mrs. Conn? I have another meeting. I don't have long. Our family name is Ween, I tell the lady. Ween An Dung is my brother, the one in the hospital. Say his leg is broken, May whispers. Say his head aches. He can't think. Big bro can't think. Did he ever? Obedient son never learns to be clever. Cha rules the family. He wears the crown. Wife and children got to bow down. Told where to work and who to marry, part of the baggage firstborn must carry. More of the message he reads on the page, support the parents in their old age. Him all skinny and hairless and pale, knows he ain't allowed to fail. Have the right answer, say yes sir. Be best in the class, become a doctor. The only thing he can control, lil' bro, like he owned my soul. Little son doggy dog, he don't care. Gonna be a hip-hop millionaire. The reality is, Mrs. Dung, this incident occurred at a public bus stop, off school property, outside school hours. The district does not consider it a school safety issue. Your son isn't eligible for transfer. Not her problem, I tell Maye. Lady gives us advice from her personal life. Better not view yourself as a victim, run around squawking like some scaredy chicken. Not when you're considered the model minority. Check the statistics if you doubt her authority. College, job, house in the suburbs in one generation. For Asians, a self-fulfilling expectation. For the native born left behind, doing the drugs, doing the crime, 1 in 3 end up in jail, knowing from birth they're doomed to fail. What does she say, May asks. We should move to the suburbs. Suburbs is non-dawn, right? In the suburbs, the school gives every kid a computer. Every house has 2 cars and a swimming pool. In the suburbs, I tell Maye, every kid goes to college. Of course, she thinks that's a lie. Everything I say is lying. Like, how would she know? I can't tell you more than the police told me. A few students got involved in an ordinary street gang dispute. No weapons, no arrests, no violent incident report filed. A safety transfer is out of the question. That story got to boomerang. I'm done, never been involved in no gang. Lady Principal's head snaps up. She leans forward, staring at me. You know this how? Name the gang gonna invite. Some pussy rather run than fight. Lady Principal laughs. Her eyes spark. She flashes a mouthful of perfect teeth. Freestyling ain't that easy, but little sundog be feeling breezy. And those bodacious titties jump for joy when the Lady Principal laughs. Andong got lost on the path of Dharma, spitting good deeds to plant seeds of karma. Fell mellow yellow searching for enlightenment, they breaking on him on the cold cement. What can the loser gain from his pain? Never did Asians no good to complain. The principal's hands slam the desk. Who put you up to this? She stands, all tall and tense and quivery, leans across at me. This campaign has gone far enough. Anyone who imagines forcing me out will improve the racial climate here is dreaming or has something to gain. I have a dream, Dog tells her. One day this nation will rise up. An eye for an eye, then we see who's going to cry. Lady Principal's mouth opens. The wings of her nose spread, eyes wide furious. You do not appropriate those words, understand? Her hands peel off the desk, clench into fists. You think you've known racism? Try 400 years. 400 years and counting. Sundog got nothing to say. Sorry, sorry. May hauling on my arm, trying to drag me away. Sorry is all May understands. Wait, the lady holds up her hand to stop us. The district does have solutions for boys like your son. Alternative schools that give troubled students the supervision they need. A fresh start in a work-based environment for those who choose to cooperate. Lady Principal flashes her perfect smile. At your request, I'll support an administrative transfer. It's the best I can do. Out on the street, May digs steely fingers into my shoulder and shakes me, trying to rattle loose the words I'm hiding. Andung will go to a new school, I say, because that's what she wants to hear. Her skinny arms snake around me and squeeze. This doesn't happen, not even to firstborn. We're not like those TV families, all the time touching and hugging. Sundog fights free, because Sundog know. Alternative schools where the gangstas go. May has no idea. Neither does Cha. Their ignorance spreads out all around them, an ocean of helplessness with no islands, no shore. Sundog sees hands waving above the water. Sundog stands and watches from someplace far off. We stop at the corner by Anastasi's Seafood. On the sidewalk is a basket of live crabs, their red and blue legs scrabbling, struggling to climb up and over each other, struggling to escape. Red light turns green. We make it to the safe side of Jackson Street, where I can think. Do I have to apologize to Andong? Tet is coming. The time to pay debts, fix mistakes, start over. I used to love the Tet celebrations back when I was a little kid. Then Cha lifted me up in his arms to watch the lion dance. Drums pound, pound, pounding, cymbals clash. The lion bows, he leaps, he shakes his head. Huge lion eyes, big square teeth. Evil spirits get scared away. Sundogs say the whole deal is fake. No American kid likes sticky rice cake or praying to the ancestors for protection, even on dung grounds for objection. Better luck to be born an orphan, free to be your own kind of person. Even though he's not genuine black, Dog keeps me from being genuine yellow. Two together make an original, a two-toned, tiger-striped, new breed of animal, camouflaged for sun and shade, dancing in the space rhyming made. I see you, but you don't see me. Open your eyes to reality. Let grow your grip on what used to be. Learn to sail in uncharted territory. Find second sun got there first. Yeah.
Thank you, Tally. Okay. Next up is Rachel Weissman, whose memoir, I Want You, is featured in issue 14. She's writing memoir of her father, a bohemian artist from New York City, Shuttle, who had gender reassignment surgery in 1978. Rachel also wrote a play called Laugh Red Medusa, Laugh Laugh, which was produced in Chicago by the theater Ubelek. Any close?
Exactly.
Wow. I did something with Elena Ferrante's translator last time and butchered everything, so I just presume I'm messing it up. Okay. Her journalism has appeared in the New York Times, the New York Observer, Metropolis, Audubon, On Earth, Entertainment Weekly, and Phoenicia Times. Please welcome Rachel Weissman.
Thanks everyone for coming out, and thanks to Epiphany and the Center for Fiction. This is an essay that's based on the same material that my memoir is about. It's a story of me and my father. It's divided into sections, and I'm going to be reading you sections 4 through 7. The action takes place in the late 70s, and it's important to keep in mind that transsexuality was virtually unknown at that point. It's not like it is now. So it's I Want You. 4. I sit on the radiator cover in my bedroom, the window cracked, smoking cigarettes, burning incense, wondering when my life will start. Bored, frustrated, and strangely excited by the glimmerings of an adult world that feels just out of reach, impossible for my 13-year-old body to inhabit. My mother knocks. What do you want? I just want to know how you are. May I come in? Don't open the door. I'm fine. Go away. Each word a dagger. Poor woman, she's petrified by the bristling teenager I've become. My father has vacated our Upper West Side apartment, moving to a loft downtown. My parents are separated. I wear this new status like a war medal. Your father and I just can't live with each other anymore. It happens sometimes. How do you feel about this? Oh Christ, not this again. Sent to a shrink, I spend my time observing the objects in the room, noticing the changing location of the orange ceramic rooster from the table to the windowsill. At first, my father's leaving unmoors me, my love for him so much simpler than my love for my mother. But soon I learn that more attention is to be had from him in this new dual household situation. Besides, myriad routes to escape adult surveillance emerge. One day, I cut school to lose my virginity with Bobby, the hand-me-down boyfriend I inherited from my prettier and more popular best friend. Years before Nike, I lived their slogan, just do it. I concoct a plan to transport myself and my circle of 5 close girlfriends to the other side of the chasm that separates us from adulthood. Each of us must lose our virginity before turning 14. Misguided attempts at conquering my fears by diving into shallow water characterize much of the next 20 years of my life. Bobby is super cool and the perfect prospect. A few years older than me, he rides a skateboard, is a low-echelon graffiti writer, has longish, dirty blonde hair, and a nasty scar on his neck. The quick-come kid, he proudly calls himself. And I so ignorant as to believe it a lofty title. He's dropped LSD hundreds of times, and when we trip together, he becomes a cartoon character, spewing the phrase, tripping, zipping, whoopee, over and over, his face lit up by a manic smile. The sex is anticlimactic, to say the least. It barely touches me emotionally or physically, a notch in my belt, a relief to have dispatched my virginity, leaving childhood behind. After, lying naked in bed in the guest room that was my father's photo darkroom before he left, I trace the raised red scar that begins at Bobby's pale neck, ending at his bony hip. How'd you get it? He tells me he once dated a black girl, provoking an attack by racist thugs on a bridge. I almost bled to death. Then I know he's worthy of my attention. Sex becomes an opportunity to collect stories, experiences, my body and heart just hitchhikers on trips arranged by my destructive ambition. 5. I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. My father's words don't make sense. Don't jibe with the 52-year-old man in a corduroy suit sitting across from me, whose head is balding in the middle, hair flying away on the sides. I picture him years before, coming to see me on school days when I stayed home sick, arriving from his workaday world, wearing his beige Burberry trench coat to sit at my bedside, taking my face in his hands as he does now. Rachel, I'll always be your father, but this is something I feel inside. I want to believe him, but his words ring false, as if he were auditioning for a part in a cheap TV movie. I pull away. This is so much more fucked up than anything I could have imagined. There's reason for why my parents are divorcing, but part rings true. Something genetic, some strand of DNA twisted the wrong way that explains my sense of not fitting in with the kids at my junior high. I've always felt something was wrong with him, with me. What do you mean? What does this mean, you're a man in a woman's body? Are you going to have an operation like that man in the magazine? I ask, recalling the New York Times magazine story on Jan Morris from a few months before. Like a car wreck, it transfixed me and set me to wondering how I'd feel if this were ever to befall my family. My father's hands are blurry with movement through my tears. They come toward me and pull back, unsure what to do. He pulls me to him, and then I'm against his shoulder, the red and orange paisley pattern of his shirt filling my view. No, shh, he whispers. No, I won't have that operation. I'll always be your father. He lets go of me and takes from his pocket the stained handkerchief that I love, because it is his imperfect and familiar object, imperfect like us, tainted like us. He wipes my face with it, pressing too hard, as usual. His expressions of physical affection earnest, but always somewhat awkward. The roughness comforts me, even as I know nothing will ever be the same again. 6. When he told me, it felt like he stuck a knife inside my vagina and twisted it, my mother says. Funny, I just feel numb. My mother's rage overwhelms and surprises me, bursting from a Trojan horse, itsy-bitsy men brandishing spears, running around the room. I telescope her and the army into a small, manageable box, like the sign language interpreter in the corner of a television screen. I tell an older friend about my father. He's not a freak, she says. No one is all male or all female. It's just a continuum. Don't worry. 7. 2 years pass. My father takes me to a small French restaurant in the West Village for a special occasion that will be a surprise. The room is elegant, suffused with a warm, orangey light. I wear a lavender 40s dress bought for $2 from a vintage store on his block, and he his paisley Schiaparelli shirt. Partway through, he leans forward to take my hand. Bunny Bear, remember when I told you about my feeling of being born in the wrong body? Occasionally, I wonder about the secret he shared with me, but mostly I don't think about it, nor about the truth I'd recognized about our freakishness. I'm going through with it, with the operation. The blood drains from my face. You told me you would never have that operation. I focus on the smile lines etched at the corner of his eyes. Dad, let's trip together. Cut through the veils of illusion, see who you really are. He smiles, considering my suggestion. I tried smoking pot once, he offers. I got so paranoid I thought the Nazis were after me. Besides, sweetheart, it's too late. I've started taking hormones. The waitress clears my half-finished dinner. How can you be so sure? I'm never sure about anything. Trip with me. She returns and reels off a list of desserts, ending with creme brulee. It's more than just hormones, he says. I'm a eunuch. They cut my balls off. The rest of the surgery will take place in 6 months. That's when his penis will be cut off and a vagina synthesized for him. I nod and smile until the waitress returns with my leftovers, beautifully wrapped in tin foil, shaped into the form of a swan.
So we're going to take a short break before we come back for Gus and Joseph to read. And I guess we're going to take about 10 minutes, Odessa? How's that sound? Okay. And this will also give us a chance to promote some gambling. And here's how it works. So there are copies of Epiphany. They each have a number in the back. If you want to get involved in the raffle, the prizes are in the back. But you'll find a little number in the back of the editions. And I'll replace this one. And then I guess at the end we're going to do the picking. Okay, great. Terrific. Okay, so let's go get some wine, and we'll send you back here in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks to Epiphany, Odette and Willard, for being receptive to this memoir. And Joel has been with Epiphany for the whole almost from the beginning, and does a huge amount of work going through submissions and whatnot. And yeah, thanks to everyone who came. The title of my memoir is The Little Iceberg. Which I haven't been able to think of a better title. That was the working title, and still is, but that's what I'm calling it. Not in the sense of someone icy or emotionally inaccessible, but just like a small, jaunty chip off the old burr. All right, so I'm going to read a couple of sections about my older brother, Dan. My brother Dan, our parents' firstborn, was the great experiment, the test case of their child-rearing theories, the breaker of filial trails that I then had the good fortune to walk on. Slides of him in a season that's clearly spring show him bundled up in long pants, a sweater, and a hat, while in corresponding later shots of me, I'm in shorts and a t-shirt and hatless. Indeed, we both were by then. He was a very tolerant and solicitous older brother, as brothers go, during essentially every phase of our childhood and youth. In an emblematic image, the two of us are seated, entirely absorbed in the moment. A giraffe, or President Eisenhower, or a giraffe with President Eisenhower clinging to its neck could have sauntered past and we wouldn't have noticed, on the back steps of the West 22nd Street house in Jamestown, New York, where I grew up. In his right hand is half a blue popsicle. In one of my hands is a fudgesicle, and in the other half of Dan's blue popsicle. My brother's and my room was on the downhill side of the house, with a double window looking out on the steep tree-covered slope that separated our yard from that of our neighbor, Mrs. Harvey, a friendly old woman with a ceramic bird bath, its bowl stained dark green from generations of algae, near her side porch, which was covered with a profusion of leafy vines that clung to the house's stucco, almost completely obscuring the windows all the way to the roof. And I once actually broke the bowl of that bird bath from having, as my father put it, he worked for a newspaper, and he would occasionally write cute things that we'd said and done, and I had doffed my trousers to wash them in her bird bath, and succeeded in breaking it, but I was such an adorable child that she completely forgave me for it. Dan's bed was the plush settee of a faded mauve and moss-green Davenport with stylized floral motifs shaved into its nap. My bed had a barracksy iron post frame painted black, and in the middle of the headrail I'd placed a decal of a roaring polar bear, which my Uncle Darwin had brought back for me from a tour of duty with his army unit in Alaska. And this little section is called Flamethrower Eyes. Dan and I had a shaggy green rug in our room, about 3 feet by 5 feet, faded from many washings and with a worn-out backing. On cold or rainy days, or when we were tired of playing outside, we'd sometimes put this rug in the middle of the floor, and one of us would balance on the toes of one foot in the middle of it and twirl around, twisting it into a heavily forested mountain landscape with several steep ridges radiating out from the central caldera. We had authored our impromptu orogenies often enough to have developed a virtuoso's disdain for even minor falling short in the execution, and would not hesitate to flick the landscape flat and retorque it with one nonchalant pirouette after another until we were entirely satisfied. We'd then get out our box of animals, exotic African species, mammals and birds of the North American woodlands, traditional farm critters, as well as a fearsome array of dinosaurs and an alphabet of dog breeds from beagle to wolfhound. and begin manufacturing elaborate adventures for them in this verdant, treacherous world. Early on, we'd have to decide whether or not to allow the conflation of geological epochs. Could the dinosaurs mix with the modern animals? And after that, the story could begin to unfold. The impulse to organize the beasts into armies of some kind was always strong, though not invariably determinative. But if that was to be our framework, solemn and painstaking efforts would be devoted to maintaining parity as the troops were mustered one by one, as in choosing up sides to play baseball. The process sometimes involved protracted negotiations worthy of a late-night coven of senators, as we debated the comparative dangerousness of a rhinoceros and a polar bear, or fleetness of a zebra and an elk, or, more hair-splittingly, aerial prowess of an eagle and a pterodactyl. All aspects of the adventure we were preparing to enact were open to discussion, and we'd each put forth provisional rules as they occurred to us, as well as assigning to the animals any special powers, temporal or spatial limitations, supplemental capabilities and the like that we deemed necessary, as in a case, say, where Dan had a badger and I had a lamb, since they were the last two animals in the pool. I'd stipulate that my lamb could fly, or had flamethrower eyes, or something along those lines, and Dan would either agree or make a counter-proposal, and we'd eventually settle on a rule. The dramas we invented were heavily dependent on narrative, as we described in detail what each character was up to and why, and could go on for hours or even be carried over to the next day. We would ascribe thoughts and feelings to these mass-produced blobs of plastic, as if they were more exalted and touchy than Achilles, and hatched battle plans of Clausewitzian ingenuity for our tyrannosaurs and penguins and goats. Much of the time we'd be lying on our stomachs, so the action would be at eye level, chattering on about the evolving skirmishes, and regularly emitting all manner of outlandish vocalizations no system of notation ever devised could possibly hope to capture. But we would sometimes expand the field of action to other parts of the room, one or both beds, the windowsills, the drawers of our bureau, and were perfectly prepared to leave one plot line hanging unresolved while we shifted our focus to finish or further an earlier one. And once in a while, a gleeful madness would overcome us, and we'd pull out soldiers and tanks and fighter planes and B-52s and unleash a time-dissolving Götterdämmerung wherein it was every link in the great chain of being for itself, till nothing that ever breathed was left alive.
Great. Our last reader tonight is Joseph Salvatore. Part of the objective when you're submitting is to get the editor's attention. Here's the title of Joseph's story. For the battering of heart in the manner of our daughter, that she may rise and stand o'erthrown by thee and made new. Gets your attention. Joseph is the author of a story collection, To Assume a Pleasing Shape, BOA editions in 2011, and co-author of the forthcoming college textbook, Understanding English Grammar. He is the book review editor for the fiction and poetry at the Brooklyn Rail, a great publication if you don't know it, and a frequent contributor to the New York Times Book Review. His writing has appeared in The Collegist, Dossier Journal, HOW Journal, New York Tyrant, Open City, we miss them, Post Road, Rain Taxi, Salt Hill, Sleeping Fish, and Willow Springs, among others. He's assistant professor of writing and literature at the New School in New York City, where he founded the literary journal Lit. He lives in Queens and is reachable at www.josephsalvatore.com. Please welcome Joseph.
Thank you. Thanks, Joel. I have to echo all of the expressions of gratitude that we've heard tonight. I'm really pleased to be here, grateful for all of you for coming, and want to thank Odette and Joel. I've been a fan of Epiphany magazine since its beginning. I still have its first issue back at my apartment, and so it's a real honor to finally have my work in its pages. As well, it's an honor to be reading at the Center for Fiction, and so I'd like to thank Noreen Tomasi and her team for all the good work they've done to make the Center for Fiction the splendid and vital thing that it is. The piece I'm going to read is short enough to be read in its entirety, despite what the title implies. But dense enough so that you'll all probably have to purchase a copy of the new issue just to figure out what I've done. It seems I've never been able to write with impunity. So just a word of context. This sort of is a interior monologue in the form of a prayer, kind of rambling prayer. The writer Matthew Vollmer was thinking about the Book of Common Prayer, and he was kind of wondering what a book of uncommon prayer would be like. And so the following effort arose out of that speculation. For the battering of heart in the matter of our daughter, that she may rise and stand, overthrown by thee and made new. Dear Lord, we ask that our little girl learn the lines that her mom and me have taught her, lines that you yourself done spewed on Joseph of Nazareth and on all those who would listen thereafter, lines that our little girl must memorize to recite for when they put her up in the box. Truth is, we all know it's true, her mom and me, the Spirit comes when it will upon those ferocious wings. Says she does too, our little girl, says she knows it's true. Never one to argue, she, dutiful little servant, and it's best to believe, best for us all. Such faith she puts in us, her parents, such a child of faith and faithful ways. Our little girl, please help her to learn those words, Lord, she was visited upon. And that's the fulsome truth, dear Lord. Yea, that you help her to memorize and speak that truth. We ask this in your name. And you know we did our part before they took us. Taught her those words, dear Lord, said them along with her again and again in her little room, watched her small lips purse and pucker, her eyes frightful in their concentration, visited upon, visited upon, visited upon. And we put her in her pretty plaid Sunday school dress and her little pink bedroom on her bed reading the Bible. We did this immediately after the school called. When they said they were concerned, when they said she was bleeding on her school seat, said we should expect a visit. And lo, but didn't that visit come soon after that phone call? The knock on the front door of our small raised ranch that very afternoon, knock they did, so polite they were. But you know all about that, because you know all, Lord. You saw it all. You were there. You're always there. Everywhere, in my head and in my deeds, in my prayers and intercessions, in the sweat on my sheets. Any action on my part already prefigured, a part of your divine plan. Seems to me now, looking back, you might even have had some orchestrating role in it all. Something larger than my meager mind could comprehend. Perhaps somewhere in the back of my head, as they say, I was led, in fact, to act out this role. Programmed by my Creator, a willing servant I. For who but you, after all, understands so well the ways and manner of temptation, that great serpent, he of the whisper and waggle, that blower of breezes that lifts the hem of a pretty plaid Sunday school dress and wafts toward a father's nose the siren scent of unbreached girlhood. He of the false promises, he of the great illusion, the king of lies, the grand seducer, that beast was created by you, after all, Lord. Your fingerprints are all over this family's house. She is our little girl, but she is, in the end, your little girl. And that's what we will say to anyone who will listen, visited upon in her sleep. And yet that fucking pig of South Carolina law enforcement said to his partner, wait, Ray, they got a name for that. What do they call that, a succubus? Nah, Mike, said the other pig, a South Carolina nigger pig standing up free and proud in his blue shirt sleeves, his muscly arms dangling, his shiny black nightstick, shiny like his shiny shaved bald eggplant head, standing in the doorway of our living room, inside of our own home, in front of photos of our little girl. It's incubus, Mike, because the male ghost sticks it in, see? Whereas the female ghost, she sucks it. Get it? Suck? Think he's talking about an incubus, Mike. Oh, that's nice, Ray. You got yourself a mnemonic device there. Well, big guy here can call it whatever he wants. His daughter keeps fucking up her story. like she's reading a script, says she bleeds because she got stigmata from an angel's visitation. You ever hear of a stigmata staying in a school seat like that? Huh, big guy? I said I was going into that bedroom to talk to my little girl right now and straighten this all out, and that's when the white pig broke my arm. On purpose, I do believe, Lord. He twisted me around in my own kitchen to put my wrist behind my back up to my neck, up to where it shouldn't have gone. You're hurting me, officer, sir. And I didn't mean to spit, but spit I did, and he pushed my arm higher, and the other pig tore my wrist skin inside 2 tight handcuffs. My arms bent back behind me, the elbow and up way near my neck like ferocious wings, and then they yanked my arms down the wrong way, and that's when I both heard and felt the snap of my right forearm, my pitching arm, that all-American athletic talent you gave me, Lord, gone to rot right there with that one snap. That precious bones break, and now all that poor thing does is hang loose like an empty shirt sleeve. No more fastballs from that one. No, sir, Lord. Pain beyond my poor power of description. And you know that a no-good arm is no good in Broad River. And lo, I ask you, would they have dispensed the same treatment and said all that accursedness to Joseph in regards about the Blessed Virgin, Lord? Her gravid womb, its blessed skin still miraculously intact, the mystery of that sacred threshold never breached? Would they have dragged Joseph of Nazareth, he who never breached that sacred threshold, he who stood aside for the immaculate cuckolding, that sterile yet staggering assignation? Would they have dragged him across the linoleum floor of his own kitchen on his knees, pulled him up by his hair and ears to the Formica countertop, holding with their South Carolina pig hands his cheek against the dark brown glass of his microwave oven, while they took turns striking and again striking the splintering bones of his shattered shins with their polished black clubs, striking him long after he swore he wouldn't try to run again, wouldn't try to kick again, wouldn't spit no more? Would they have done such a thing to me if I was Joseph, O Lord? Tell me, would they have done? Even after I told them at my front door, responding to their polite as fuck all knocking before they pushed their way in and past me, breaching with their manly intention my own sacred threshold, even after I told them I was at prayer just now, and to excuse me from these legal matters of the world, these accusations wrongly issued, polite I was, even after they responded in the negative when I asked if they had obtained a search warrant. Would they have done? Some mistake made somewhere, officers. I hereby solemnly promise to clear it all up ASAP. My little girl got groined on the crossbar of her bike this weekend. That's all that mess on her seat was. But now that you mention it, officer, sir, as regards what you report she was saying, we did, that is her mom and me, hear ghostly noises in her bedroom last night. She wouldn't tell us what all it was about when we came knocking, so we tried to open the door, but it wouldn't give. And so we said, honey, open your door, let us in. But she had locked it against us. And we, in this house, officers, we respect a person's privacy. Didn't see or touch her again until this morning, before you came bringing all this foolishness to my door. And so we ask, Lord, her mom and me, who want to keep her with us and out of harm's way, for you know as I do what they do to you in here for this kind of thing. We ask you, nay, beseech you, Lord, with all the angels and the saints, we ask that our little girl, with the tattered and torn hem of her pretty plaid Sunday school dress, her missing skin, her breached threshold, her immaculate wound, we ask that she learn the lines we taught her, express and enunciate the mystery of her own breached threshold. We have faith you will help us, Lord, her mom and me, and lo, when I think back to the boy I was with the all-American pitching arm, those dark days when I doubted not only my pitching talent, but my mind, my very thinking process itself, I recall, as I'm sure you recall, Ma saying all the time back then, there's something wrong with the way you think, boy. Don't you come in this house thinking those thoughts. And now when she comes to Broad River for her visits, while I wait handicapped and helpless in here for an answer to my prayers, she says it again and again, words she seems to have memorized. Sits across from me, she does, on the other side, these benches cold and hard, this glass smeared with spit and snot, the camera's always on, the redundant guards watching our every fucking move, and all the visitors smoking except for Ma. Her golden Bible in her gingham lap, her hands folded upon that heavy book, her eyes unblinking, she looking through the smeared glass saying, I'll always come visiting you, boy, but you can't count on me forever. You gotta invite the Lord in. Open yourself to his presence, boy. He the only visitor you ever gonna need. He the light, he the cure. Let him in when he knocks, my son. Invite him in for a visit, and I swear, all the days of your life, you shall surely know peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Folks, thank you. I want to thank all of you guys for coming out on a cold, wet, rainy, nasty night. We only do this a couple of times a year, and it's the one time where we breach the anonymity of publishing something, and it's terrific to come and actually see the writers, Tally and George, Joseph, Rachel, and Gus. Thank you guys for reading. It was terrific. We also, for this issue, want to thank Samantha Smith, who's just recently joined us, and Nick Edmondson, who's our poetry editor, who couldn't be here tonight. And then lastly, we want to thank Willard Cook, who publishes and who is always in there struggling to keep this baby afloat year after year, and our editor-in-chief, Odette Heinemann, who each year does an enormous amount of reading and yet doesn't appear with the thick Coke bottle lenses you'd expect from what effort she makes. But anyway, to all of you, we'll keep you posted on the next reading, our next issue, and in the meantime, thanks so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Good night.